The shipping manifest made no sense. Rachel Stone had reviewed thousands of cargo documents in her 15 years as Earth's trade compliance officer, and something about this one felt wrong. The numbers didn't match. Container weight exceeded declared contents by almost 2 tons. She pulled up the detailed scan from the Grexian checkpoint, where the human transport vessel Meadowlark had been detained 3 days ago. The ship carried humanitarian supplies bound for the outer colonies. Medical equipment, water purifiers, nutrition supplements. Standard relief cargo that human vessels transported across the galaxy every week. Rachel zoomed in on Container 7. The external manifest listed it as carrying portable water filtration units. 48 units, each weighing approximately 30 kilograms. Total declared weight, 1,440 kilograms. The checkpoint scanner showed actual weight at 3,200 kilograms. She accessed the internal sensor logs. The Meadowlark's own systems had flagged the discrepancy during loading, but the override came from Assembly Customs Authority, official seal, priority clearance, the kind of authorization that told crew members not to ask questions. Rachel's fingers moved across the holographic interface. She pulled up 6 months of human transport records, her screen filled with data. She filtered for weight discrepancies. 12 ships, 15 discrepancies, all with assembly override codes. Her chest tightened. She opened the deep scan image from the Grexian checkpoint. The technology could see through container walls. Inside the crates marked as water filters, she found cylindrical objects, plasma coils, military grade, the kind used in capital ship weapons systems. Someone was smuggling weapons using human ships, using human diplomatic immunity, using the reputation Earth had built over 2 centuries of honest service. Rachel sat back in her chair. Through her office window, she could see the curve of the station's observation deck, and beyond that, the stars. Somewhere out there, 12 human crews were flying around the galaxy with illegal weapons in their cargo holds. They had no idea. If any of them got intercepted by hostile forces or inspected by less friendly governments, they would be treated as arms dealers. She thought about the Meadowlark. The crew consisted of 7 people. The captain was a woman named Patricia who had grandchildren back on Earth. Rachel had met her twice at trade conferences. Patricia talked about her grandkids constantly, showed everyone pictures. She would never knowingly transport weapons. But if someone decided to blow up the Meadowlark before asking questions, Patricia's grandchildren would never know why their grandmother died. They would just know that Grandma's ship exploded somewhere in deep space. Rachel pulled up the Assembly Council's schedule. They were in session today. She gathered her evidence, compiled it into a formal report, and requested emergency testimony time. The request was granted within an hour. The council would see her in 2 hours. The Galactic Assembly headquarters was a marvel of architecture. The building floated in space, a massive sphere covered in transparent sections that let natural starlight illuminate the interior. Rachel had walked these halls hundreds of times. She knew every corridor, every meeting room, every office. The council chamber was smaller than the main assembly hall. Only senior members met here. 5 beings sat at a curved table made of polished Vethrian stone. Speaker Dren occupied the center position. He was Vorthian, tall and thin with purple skin that seemed to shimmer under the chamber lights. His face was angular, his eyes dark and intelligent. Rachel entered and stood at the presentation podium. She activated her data display. Holographic images filled the space between her and the council. Ship manifests, scan results, weight discrepancies, the damning image of plasma coils hidden inside humanitarian aid containers. She explained everything: the pattern, the override codes, the danger to human crews who had no idea they were being used. When she finished, she waited for the outrage, the immediate investigation, the apologies. Speaker Dren leaned back in his chair. He looked at the other council members. One of them, a squat green being with 4 arms, made a gesture Rachel recognized as amusement. "Ambassador Stone," Dren said. His voice carried that particular tone that people used when they spoke to someone they considered beneath them. "You come before this council with concerns about administrative paperwork." Rachel blinked. "These aren't paperwork errors. These are weapons being smuggled using human vessels, using our immunity protocols." Another council member, this one resembling a floating collection of crystalline structures, chimed in. "The Assembly Customs Authority has full discretion over cargo classifications. If they deemed it necessary to transport certain materials through alternative channels, that is within their mandate." "Alternative channels," Rachel's voice rose slightly. "You mean illegal weapons smuggling?" Dren waved his hand. The holographic evidence disappeared. "You are overreacting to routine logistics management. The Assembly has maintained galactic peace for over 1,000 years. We understand the complexities of governance far better than your species, which has only been part of this community for 200 years. The other council members made various sounds of agreement. Rachel felt heat rising in her face. Human crews are at risk. If they're intercepted, they'll be treated as weapons traffickers. "Then perhaps human crews should be more careful about the cargo they accept," said the 4-armed council member. Dren smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Ambassador Stone, I appreciate Earth's enthusiasm for transparency. It's quite charming. However, if you continue to disrupt council proceedings with these trivial concerns, we may need to review Earth's trade privileges. I'm sure your government wouldn't want to lose access to the Verillion Gate networks over administrative confusion." The threat hung in the air. Without the gate networks, Earth's trade would collapse. Food shipments would take months instead of days. Medicine wouldn't reach colonies in time. Millions would suffer. Rachel looked at each council member. None of them met her eyes. They had already dismissed her. To them, this conversation was over. She gathered her data tablet. Her hands were shaking, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand perfectly, Speaker Dren. Thank you for your time." She turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Behind her, she heard the council resume their meeting. Something about budget allocations for the next quarter. They had already forgotten about her. Rachel stepped into the corridor. The doors closed behind her with a soft sound. She stood there for a moment, breathing carefully. Then she walked to the nearest secure communication station. She entered her authorization code and opened a priority channel to Earth. The connection took 30 seconds to establish. When the encryption confirmed, she spoke 3 words. "Protocol Severance, Initiate." On Earth, in the Human Diplomatic Command Center, alarms began to sound. The protocol hadn't been used in 200 years. It meant total withdrawal from all galactic commitments. Every human peacekeeper, mediator, engineer, doctor, and diplomat would receive the same message within minutes. "Come home, all of you now." Rachel closed the channel. She looked out the window at the beautiful assembly headquarters floating in space. She had believed in this place, believed in what it represented. That belief had just died. The message reached David Cole while he was mediating a border dispute between 2 species who had hated each other for 3,000 years. He was sitting in a neutral observation room on Kelvin Station, watching Threxian Commander Vosh and Molari General Krine argue about a mining asteroid that neither of them actually needed. David's tablet buzzed. He glanced down, 3 words, "Protocol Severance, Initiate." He looked up at the 2 commanders. They were still arguing. They had been arguing for the past 4 hours about the same asteroid. Tomorrow they would argue for 4 more hours. Next week, same thing. But they would keep talking instead of shooting. That was the important part. For 12 years, David had maintained this delicate balance. He knew both commanders well enough to know when to interrupt, when to offer compromise, when to let them vent. He knew Vosh liked his morning beverage exactly at 700 hours. He knew Krine had a daughter getting married next month. These small human touches had kept the peace. David stood up. Both commanders stopped talking and looked at him. "Gentlemen," David said quietly, "I'm afraid I need to leave." Vash's translator crackled. "Leave? We are in the middle of negotiations." "I know, I'm sorry. There's an emergency on Earth." "How long will you be gone?" Krine asked. David looked at the protocol severance message again. "I won't be coming back." He walked out before they could respond. Behind him, he heard confused voices. He had been part of their daily routine for so long that his absence would feel strange. He wondered how long it would take before they started shooting at each other again. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out 1,000 times. Patricia Wong shut down the quantum relay station she had maintained for 8 years. The massive machine hummed to silence. Without the relay, 40 star systems would lose real-time communication. They would be isolated, but Patricia had her orders. Dr. Sarah Kim packed up her medical supplies on a station where she had treated patients from 17 different species. The station administrator begged her to stay. There was a plague outbreak 2 systems away. Sarah was the only doctor who understood cross-species epidemiology well enough to create a treatment protocol. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "I have to go home." "People will die," the administrator said. "I know," Sarah's voice broke, "but my government has given me a direct order. Something terrible has happened." Lieutenant Robert Hayes pulled his peacekeeping unit out of a demilitarized zone where 2 neighboring species had maintained an uneasy truce for 60 years. His soldiers had been the neutral force preventing either side from crossing the border. Without them, there was nothing stopping either side from starting a war. "Pack everything," Robert told his team. "We're leaving in 3 hours." One by one, humans across the galaxy received the message. One by one, they abandoned their posts, not because they wanted to, because they had been called home. At the Galactic Assembly, the full session was in progress. Representatives from 400 species filled the massive amphitheater. Speaker Dren was presenting the quarterly economic report, trade numbers, growth projections, standard bureaucratic presentation that most representatives ignored while checking their personal devices. The human delegation sat in their designated section, 43 ambassadors and staff members. They had been quiet all session. Several assembly members had noticed their unusual silence but dismissed it as human sulking after the morning's council meeting. Then Rachel Stone stood up. The movement caught attention because it violated protocol. You didn't stand during another speaker's presentation. You waited your turn. Dren paused mid-sentence. "Ambassador Stone, you are out of order." Rachel's voice carried across the chamber. "Speaker Dren, I am requesting immediate recognition for an emergency motion." Several representatives groaned. Emergency motions required stopping all proceedings. Dren's expression showed irritation. "Your earlier concerns were addressed by the council this morning. There is no emergency." "There is now," Rachel said. She pulled out her data tablet and held it up. 20 minutes ago, Earth initiated protocol severance. All human personnel across the galaxy have been ordered to return home immediately. This includes peacekeepers in 7 active conflict zones, medical staff treating 3 plague outbreaks, engineers maintaining critical infrastructure on 41 stations, and diplomatic staff mediating 62 ongoing negotiations. The chamber went silent. Dren's purple skin seemed to darken. "That is an empty threat. Earth would never abandon its commitments." "It's not a threat," Rachel said. "It's already happening. Right now, human peacekeepers are packing their equipment. Human doctors are transferring patient files. Human engineers are shutting down systems. We're done." A representative from the Palarian delegation stood up. "This is irresponsible. You can't just leave. Lives depend on your services." Rachel turned to face the Palarian. You're absolutely right. Lives do depend on our services. Perhaps the Council should have considered that before using our ships to smuggle weapons and threatening us when we complained about it. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted questions. Dren tried to restore order. Several species immediately accessed their communication networks to confirm Rachel's claims. The confirmation came quickly. Human peacekeepers were indeed withdrawing. Medical stations were going dark. Relay networks were shutting down. It wasn't a bluff. Dren's voice cut through the chaos. This is unacceptable. Earth signed treaties. You have legal obligations. Rachel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Our treaties required the Assembly to act in good faith. You violated that requirement when you used our diplomatic immunity to commit crimes. You voided the contracts, not us. She gestured to the other human delegates. As one, they stood up, 43 humans rising simultaneously. The human delegation is withdrawing from the Galactic Assembly effective immediately, Rachel announced. We will maintain embassy staff for the purpose of coordinating our departure and settling final accounts. All treaties, agreements, and cooperative ventures are suspended pending review. Dren stood up. You're making a mistake. Earth needs the Assembly more than we need you. Rachel looked at him, really looked at him. We'll see about that, Speaker. We'll see which of us was more needed. The human delegation walked toward the exits. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. 400 species watched them leave. Some looked angry, some looked confused, a few looked worried. The massive doors closed behind the last human. Dren stared at the empty seats where the human delegation had been. He felt the first flutter of concern. He pushed it away. Humans were emotional. They would calm down in a few days and come back begging to rejoin. That's what he told himself. He almost believed it. 18 hours after the humans left, the first war started. Threxian commander Vosh sent a patrol ship across the disputed border, not because he particularly wanted to. More because without David Cole there to mediate, he had no reason to trust that General Kryne wouldn't make the first move. Better to be aggressive than surprised. Kryne saw the patrol ship on his sensors. Without David there to explain that it was just a routine patrol, Kryne assumed it was an invasion probe. He sent 3 warships to intercept. Vosh saw 3 warships approaching his single patrol ship and assumed Kryne was planning an attack. He dispatched his full border fleet, 27 vessels. Kryne matched him, 30 ships. They met at the border. Someone fired first. The reports later disagreed about which side started shooting. It didn't really matter. Within an hour, both fleets were fully engaged. By the time the Assembly got a distress call, 6 ships had been destroyed and over 200 soldiers were dead. Speaker Dren sent the message to David Cole's personal communicator. The message bounced back. Service terminated. He tried to contact any human mediator. All contact information had been deactivated. The humans hadn't just left. They had cut off all communication channels. Dren assigned a Vorthian mediator to the Threxian-Molari conflict. The mediator arrived at Kelvin Station and immediately tried to force a ceasefire by threatening both sides with Assembly sanctions. Commander Vosh shot at him, not to kill, just to make a point. The mediator fled. The war expanded. Threxian allies sent ships. Molari allies responded. Within 3 days, 6 species were involved in active combat. Meanwhile, the quantum relay network began to fail. Patricia Wung had shut down the main relay station properly. She had followed all safety protocols, transferred all access codes to Assembly technicians, and left detailed instructions. But the Assembly technicians didn't understand the human modifications Patricia had made over 8 years of operation. The relay worked on quantum entanglement principles that most species could build but few could maintain. Humans had a particular gift for keeping the temperamental systems running. They adjusted things by feel as much as by calculation. They talked to the machines. They understood the subtle variations that meant something was about to break. The assembly technicians followed the instruction manual. The relay stations began developing cascade failures. The first station went offline after 31 hours, then another, then 3 more. Communication blackouts spread across sectors. Species that had maintained instant contact for centuries suddenly couldn't reach each other. Trade negotiations stalled. Emergency services couldn't coordinate. Family members lost touch. The assembly sent repair teams. None of them could figure out what was wrong. The equipment looked fine. It just didn't work. On the medical front, things got worse faster. The plague outbreak on Hellion Station had been contained by Dr. Sarah Kim's treatment protocol. She had developed a cocktail of medications that worked across 3 different species' physiologies. It was delicate work. The wrong dose killed patients as quickly as the disease. Sarah had trained local medical staff, but they didn't have her instinct for cross-species medicine. Humans had been studying alien biology for 200 years. They understood the subtle differences in metabolism, the unexpected drug interactions, the way different species responded to stress. The local doctors tried to follow Sarah's protocols. They made mistakes, small ones but deadly. The plague spread, patients died, panic set in. The station administrator sent desperate messages to Earth, begging Sarah to come back. The messages went unanswered. Earth had closed all diplomatic channels except for a single emergency frequency, and that frequency only accepted messages related to human citizens. Other medical crises erupted: an industrial accident on a mining station, a viral outbreak on a generation ship, a radiation leak on a research facility, all situations where human doctors had been the primary emergency responders. Without them, the death tolls climbed. Pirate attacks increased by 300% in the first week. Human patrol vessels had maintained security on dozens of trade routes. They didn't fight pirates often. Usually, their presence was enough. Pirates knew that humans shared information freely with all species. Attack a human patrol, and every government in the sector would know about it within hours. But now the humans were gone. The trade routes were undefended. Pirates emerged from hiding and started hitting cargo ships. The assembly tried to replace human patrols with their own security forces. It didn't work. The assembly security forces were too aggressive. They saw every unidentified ship as a potential threat. They fired on trading vessels, civilian transports, and exploration ships. Within days, legitimate traders stopped using assembly security routes. They took longer, more dangerous paths. Trade slowed. Prices increased. Economies started to contract. In the assembly chamber, emergency sessions ran day and night. Representatives screamed at each other. Everyone had suggestions. None of them worked. The Palarian delegation proposed hearing human mercenaries. They put together an attractive offer: massive payments, trade concessions, formal apologies. A representative traveled to Earth to present the offer. She waited at the embassy for 3 days before someone agreed to meet with her. Rachel Stone finally appeared. She looked tired. The representative noticed Rachel had stopped wearing her diplomatic uniform. She wore simple civilian clothes. They met in a bare conference room. No decorations, no comfort, just 2 chairs and a table. The Palarian representative, a being named Triss, laid out the offer. She emphasized the money, the benefits, the lives that would be saved. Rachel listened without interrupting. When Triss finished, Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "No," Rachel said. "You haven't even looked at the numbers," Triss protested. "I don't need to. We're not coming back." "But people are dying. The galaxy needs you." Rachel leaned forward. "The galaxy used us. There's a difference between being needed and being valued. You needed our services. You never valued our integrity." "We made mistakes," Triss admitted. The council members responsible are being investigated. Investigated, not arrested, not prosecuted, investigated. Rachel shook her head. Do you know what happened to the crew of the Meadowlark, the ship that was carrying weapons in humanitarian containers? Triss looked uncomfortable. I heard they were detained. They were attacked by a separatist group that tracked the weapons shipment. 3 crew members died. Patricia, the captain, lost her daughter. She was 26 years old. She was helping load cargo when the attack happened. Rachel pulled out a photo, a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. Her name was Jennifer. She had just gotten engaged. She wanted to be a teacher. She died because the assembly used her mother's ship to smuggle weapons and didn't bother to warn them about the danger. Triss stared at the photo. I didn't know. None of you knew. None of you cared enough to ask. Rachel put the photo away. We gave you 200 years of honest service. We mediated your wars. We healed your sick. We maintained your infrastructure. We did all of it because we believed the assembly represented something noble: cooperation, peace, progress. Rachel stood up. You proved we were wrong. You can't buy back trust, counselor. You can't negotiate your way back into integrity. Those things are built through consistent action over time. The assembly spent 2 centuries building our trust. You destroyed it in a single act of arrogance. So that's it, Triss asked. The galaxy burns and you walk away. We're not walking away. We're protecting ourselves from people who proved they'll sacrifice us without hesitation. Rachel moved toward the door. If the galaxy is burning, maybe you should ask yourselves who lit the fire. She left Triss sitting alone in the empty conference room. 3 months without humans, and the galaxy was fracturing. The Threxian-Molari War had consumed 6 neighboring systems. What started as a border skirmish had exploded into a full-scale conflict involving 12 species. Alliance networks that had maintained peace for centuries activated old defense pacts. Ancient grudges resurfaced. The assembly sent peacekeeping forces. They made things worse. The peacekeepers took sides. Some were bribed. Others had historical connections to one faction or another. Nobody trusted them. Worse, they didn't understand how to de-escalate. Human peacekeepers had a gift for reading situations. They knew when to be firm and when to show flexibility. They understood that most conflicts weren't about the stated issues. They were about pride, fear, and historical grievances. The assembly peacekeepers treated every situation like a military problem requiring a military solution. They established hard boundaries and threatened anyone who crossed them. Both sides saw this as aggression. The fighting intensified. Economic depression spread like a disease. The relay network was 50% operational at best. Some days it worked. Some days entire sectors went dark. Businesses couldn't maintain reliable communication with partners. Contracts fell through. Supply chains collapsed. The human patrol routes were now pirate havens. Criminal organizations had carved the abandoned sectors into territories. They charged protection fees. Ships that refused to pay got boarded. Several major trading companies went bankrupt after losing too many cargo vessels. Insurance rates skyrocketed. Some routes became too expensive to use. Colonies that depended on regular supply deliveries started rationing food. Frontier stations began evacuating non-essential personnel. Medical systems strained past breaking point. The plague on Hellion Station had killed over 3,000 people before it burned itself out. The local doctors never did figure out Sarah Kim's treatment protocol. They just ran out of living hosts. But that was only the most visible crisis. Across the galaxy, hundreds of smaller medical emergencies went unsolved. Species with unusual biology found that most doctors couldn't treat them. Humans had maintained databases of cross-species medical knowledge. Those databases were now locked behind Earth's closed communication networks. Several species tried to hack into the databases. Earth's cyber defense systems were remarkably effective. Every hacking attempt failed. A few resulted in counter-intrusions that left the attacking systems completely wiped. Earth sent a message after the third hacking attempt. It was short. "Stop trying to steal our research. You had access to it freely when you were trustworthy. You lost that privilege." In the assembly chamber, the mood was dark. Speaker Dren faced a vote of no confidence every week. He survived each one, but barely. Representatives screamed at each other. Fistfights broke out. One session ended when a Grexian delegate threw a chair at a Vorthian council member. The younger representatives, the ones who had grown up with humans as part of the galactic community, were especially angry. They had never known an assembly without human involvement. They couldn't understand how their elders had been so stupid. Triss, the Palarian representative who had met with Rachel, became the leader of an informal coalition of younger assembly members. They started their own investigation into the weapons smuggling operation. What they found was worse than anyone expected. The smuggling wasn't a side operation. It was systematic. Council members had been selling weapons to both sides of multiple conflicts for over 30 years. They created tensions, armed all parties, then profited from peace negotiations. Human diplomatic immunity had been perfect cover. Human ships were trusted. Nobody inspected them carefully. The humans themselves were too honest to notice the discrepancies. And if they did notice, like Rachel had, the Council could threaten Earth's trade access to keep them quiet. It had worked perfectly, until Rachel refused to stay quiet. Triss compiled the evidence. She found financial records, communication logs, shipping manifests. The web of corruption ran deep. It involved not just the council members but also senior assembly staff, security officials, and customs administrators. She presented everything at an emergency assembly session. The chamber was packed. Every representative attended. This was too important to miss. Triss spoke for 3 hours. She showed the evidence. She named names. She traced money flows. She proved that the Assembly's senior leadership had been running a criminal enterprise that deliberately destabilized the galaxy for profit. The humans had been the only thing keeping the whole scheme from falling apart. Their honest mediation had prevented the conflicts from escalating too far. Their medical assistance had kept death tolls manageable. Their infrastructure maintenance had kept communication working so peace negotiations could proceed. The Council had been using human goodness to enable their own evil. When Triss finished, the chamber was silent. Even the most cynical representatives looked shocked. The scope of the corruption was staggering. Speaker Dren tried to defend himself. He claimed the operations were sanctioned security measures. He argued that sometimes peace required dirty methods. He suggested that the younger representatives didn't understand the complexity of galactic governance. Nobody was listening. Representatives were already accessing their communication networks, sending messages to their home governments. This wasn't just an assembly scandal. This was a galactic crisis. The vote of no confidence passed unanimously. Dren and 6 other council members were arrested on the chamber floor. Assembly security took them into custody while representatives watched. Some cheered. Others just looked sad. The entire galactic government had been rotten. Everyone had trusted it. Everyone had been betrayed. Triss was elected emergency speaker. Her first act was to open a priority communication channel to Earth. She transmitted a message that included full disclosure of the crimes, the arrests, and a formal request for humanity's return. The message included something else, a personal note from Triss to Rachel. "You were right about everything. We're sorry. Please come back. We need you." Earth's response came 12 hours later. It was brief. "We acknowledge receipt of your message and evidence. We will consider our position. Do not expect a quick answer." That was all. No forgiveness. No promises, just acknowledgement. Triss stared at the message. She had hoped for more. She had hoped that exposing the truth and arresting the guilty parties would be enough. But Rachel had warned her. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. Earth had spent 2 centuries building trust with the Assembly. The Assembly had destroyed it in a moment of arrogance. Rebuilding would take time, if it was even possible. Meanwhile, the galaxy continued to burn. The Threxian-Molari War showed no signs of stopping. The relay network was failing faster. Economic depression deepened. Medical crises multiplied. The Assembly had dismantled its corruption, but it couldn't fix the damage. Not without help, not without the humans. And the humans were gone. 6 months after the walkout, Rachel stood in front of the Earth Parliament and told them the truth. "We can't go back," she said. "Not to the Assembly, not as it was." The Parliament chamber held representatives from every region of Earth and every human colony. They had been debating for weeks. Public opinion was divided. Some wanted to return and help. Others wanted nothing to do with the Assembly ever again. Rachel understood both positions. She had spent 6 months wrestling with the same question. "The evidence Speaker Triss sent us proves what we suspected," Rachel continued. "The Assembly leadership was systematically corrupt. They used our ships to smuggle weapons. They used our reputation to enable their crimes. They got people killed." She pulled up a holographic display. Images of human crew members who had died in attacks on ships carrying smuggled weapons. 23 faces, 23 families destroyed. "But here's what troubles me more," Rachel said. "It's not just that they were corrupt, it's that the system allowed it. For 30 years nobody noticed. Nobody questioned. The Assembly had no oversight, no transparency, no accountability." She changed the display. Now it showed current galactic conditions, war zones, communication blackouts, economic collapse indicators, medical crisis reports. The galaxy is suffering. Species that did nothing wrong are paying the price for Assembly corruption. Innocent people are dying. Do we have a moral obligation to help them? The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives shouted yes, others shouted no. Rachel let them argue for a few minutes, then raised her hand for silence. "I propose a middle path," she said. "We don't rejoin the Assembly. Instead, we create something new, something better. We invite other species to join us in building a different kind of galactic community, one based on transparency, accountability, and mutual respect." She pulled up a document. "I'm calling it the Coalition for Honest Commerce. The principles are simple. No member has authority over any other member. All cargo gets randomly inspected by neutral observers. All disputes go to binding arbitration by a panel of 3 species with no stake in the outcome. All meetings are recorded in public. All financial records are open." A representative from the African Union spoke up. "Who would join such a system? It sounds restrictive." "Species who value honesty over convenience," Rachel said. "Species who are tired of corruption. Species who want genuine partnership instead of hierarchy." Another representative asked, "What about the species currently suffering? Do we help them or not?" Rachel nodded. "We help anyone who asks, but on our terms. If they want our doctors, our engineers, our mediators, they accept coalition principles. They open their books. They submit to neutral oversight. They prove they won't use us again." The debate continued for hours. Finally, the vote came. The coalition proposal passed by a narrow margin. Earth sent the proposal to every species in the galaxy. The message was clear. "We're building something new. Join us if you're serious about change. Stay with the Assembly if you're not." The first species to respond was the Pelarians. Speaker Triss sent a personal message. "We're in. Tell us what you need." Then the Grexians joined. They had been the ones who first detected the smuggled weapons on human ships. They felt guilty about detaining human crews who had no idea they were carrying contraband. The Tellurians joined. The Whisper Collective joined. The Harmonious Union joined. Within 3 weeks, 32 species had signed coalition agreements. They weren't all from the Assembly. Some were independent species who had never joined the galactic government. They liked what they saw, a community built on trust instead of power. The coalition's first project was the HFY War. David Cole agreed to return to Kelvin Station, but only if both sides accepted full coalition oversight. That meant neutral observers on all military vessels, complete transparency on all operations, binding arbitration of all disputes. Commander Vosh and General Krein were desperate enough to agree. Their war had killed tens of thousands. Their economies were collapsing. Their people were demanding peace. David arrived at Kelvin Station, accompanied by observers from 5 neutral coalition species. He didn't try to force a ceasefire. Instead, he asked both commanders a simple question. What do you actually want? It took 3 days of conversation to get real answers. Vosh wanted security guarantees. His species had been invaded twice in their history. The disputed border made him nervous. Krein wanted economic access. His people needed resources the border region contained. David worked with coalition mediators to craft a solution. A shared economic zone in the disputed region. Joint patrols by both species plus neutral coalition observers. Profit sharing based on a formula that both sides helped develop. It wasn't perfect. Both commanders had to compromise, but it was fair. More importantly, it was transparent. Both governments could see exactly what their leaders had agreed to. No secret deals, no hidden clauses. The treaty was signed 4 months after David returned. The war ended. Kelvin Station became the coalition's first joint governance facility. The model spread. Coalition mediators ended 3 more conflicts using similar approaches: transparency, fairness, mutual benefit. Meanwhile, coalition engineers started rebuilding the relay network. They didn't try to fix the Assembly's failing stations. They built new ones, better designs, more reliable, easier to maintain. The new relays only connected coalition members. If you wanted access to reliable communication, you joined the coalition and accepted its principles. Species started leaving the Assembly, not all at once, a few per month, but steadily. They looked at the coalition worlds and saw prosperity, stability, cooperation. They looked at Assembly space and saw chaos, corruption, decline. The Assembly tried to compete. They implemented transparency reforms. They established oversight committees. They wrote new regulations. But it was reactive. They were copying coalition ideas. Everyone could see it. The Assembly had become a follower instead of a leader. Rachel watched it all from coalition headquarters on Earth. The building was modest compared to the Assembly's grand sphere, just a functional office complex. But it worked. One day, a young Pelarian arrived, a student studying galactic governance. She asked to interview Rachel for her research. They sat in Rachel's simple office. No luxury, no ostentation, just a desk, some chairs, and windows overlooking the city. "Do you think humans will ever forgive the Assembly?" the student asked. Rachel considered the question. "We already have. Forgiveness happened months ago. Forgiveness is easy. It's just deciding not to hold anger." "Then why haven't you returned?" "Because forgiveness and trust are different things," Rachel explained. "Forgiveness is a gift you give for your own peace. Trust is something you earn through consistent action over time. The Assembly spent 200 years earning our trust. They destroyed it in a moment. Rebuilding will take another 200 years, maybe longer." "Can it be rebuilt?" the student asked. Rachel looked out the window. Below, humans and aliens work together on coalition projects. Maybe, if they start today, if they mean it, if they maintain transparency and accountability every single day for the next 2 centuries, then maybe our grandchildren's grandchildren will trust them again. The student looked discouraged. Rachel smiled. "But that's okay. The galaxy doesn't need the old assembly, we're building something better. 2 years after the walkout, the galaxy looked completely different. The coalition had grown to include 83 species. More applications arrived every week. The requirements were strict: full financial transparency, open government meetings, random cargo inspections, binding arbitration for disputes. Many species refused these terms. They valued their privacy or their autonomy more than they valued coalition membership. That was fine. The coalition wasn't trying to rule the galaxy. It was just trying to create a space where honest cooperation could flourish. The assembly still existed, but barely. Fewer than 200 species remained members. The Grand Sphere headquarters looked empty. Whole sections had been powered down to save energy. The beautiful architecture now felt like a monument to a fallen empire. Speaker Triss still led the assembly. She had tried everything to restore its former glory. New regulations, ethics committees, transparency initiatives, all good ideas, all too late. The problem wasn't the regulations. The problem was that nobody believed in the assembly anymore. The corruption scandal had shattered the fundamental myth that held the organization together, the idea that galactic governance served everyone's interests. People now understood that the assembly had served the interests of whoever had the most power. The reforms might prevent another smuggling operation, but they couldn't change the basic structure. The assembly was still hierarchical, still centralized, still vulnerable to corruption. The coalition was different. It had no center, no hierarchy, just a network of bilateral agreements between species who chose to trust each other. If one member violated the principles, the others could cut them off. No need for complicated political processes, just simple consequences. Captain Ann Foster guided her cargo ship through what used to be assembly space. The horizon carried medical supplies bound for a Tellurian colony. The route took her past 3 former assembly stations that now sat abandoned. She remembered when these stations bustled with activity. Thousands of ships passing through every day, traders from 100 species. The stations had been symbols of galactic unity. Now they were silent, dark, empty. Anne didn't feel sad about it. Those stations had represented a false unity, a unity built on ignoring corruption as long as it benefited you, a unity that demanded humans sacrifice their integrity for the sake of not making waves. The coalition stations were smaller, less grand, but they felt honest. When Anne docked at coalition facilities, she knew exactly what to expect: professional staff, fair prices, clear regulations, no hidden agendas. Her communicator chimed. "Horizon, this is Tellurian Station 7. We have your approach vector. Please prepare for standard cargo inspection." Anne smiled. 2 years ago, that request would have annoyed her. Random inspections felt invasive, but she had come to appreciate them. When everyone got inspected randomly, nobody could claim discrimination. When inspections were public record, nobody could hide contraband. Most importantly, inspections protected her. If anyone tried to use her ship for smuggling like the assembly had done, the inspectors would catch it. Anne would never again fly through space carrying weapons she didn't know about. Station 7, Horizon acknowledges, ready for inspection. The inspection took 30 minutes. The inspector was a Grexian named Vorn. He was thorough but professional. He checked manifests, scanned containers, verified seals. Everything matched. Anne's cargo was exactly what she claimed it was. "Horizon, you're cleared for docking. Bay 12. Welcome to Tellurian space." "Thank you, Station 7. It's good to be here." Anne docked her ship and started the unloading process. While the cargo handlers worked, she walked to the station's observation deck. She liked to stretch her legs after long flights. The observation deck overlooked the planet below. Tellurian 7 was beautiful: purple vegetation, teal oceans, 3 small moons. A Tellurian joined her at the window. His translator identified him as a station administrator. "First time at our station?" he asked. "No, I've been here before, about 6 months ago." "What do you think of our little corner of space?" Anne gestured at the planet. "It's beautiful, peaceful." "We like it. Things are better since we joined the coalition." The Tellurian's expression was hard to read, but his translator conveyed satisfaction. "Before, we had to deal with assembly bureaucracy. Everything took forever. Corruption was everywhere. Now things work." "The coalition isn't perfect," Anne said, "but at least it's honest." "That's what matters." The Tellurian paused. "Can I ask you something about humans?" "Sure." "Why did you leave the assembly? I know about the smuggling scandal, but your species could have fought to reform it from within. Instead, you walked away. Why?" Anne thought about how to answer. She had been asked this question dozens of times. Different species wanted to understand human thinking. "Because we realized something important," Anne said. "You can't fix a system that's designed to be unfixable. The assembly was built on hierarchy. Someone had to be in charge. Someone had to make the final decisions. That structure inevitably leads to power concentration, and power concentration inevitably leads to corruption." "But the coalition has no central authority," the Tellurian pointed out. "How do you make decisions that affect everyone?" "We don't. We make decisions that affect specific partnerships. If Earth and Telluria have a trade agreement, we work out the terms together. If there's a dispute, we go to arbitration. Other species aren't involved unless they're affected. Then they join the conversation." "That sounds complicated." "It is," Anne admitted, "but it's honest. Nobody can force us to do anything we don't agree to. Nobody can use our reputation to commit crimes. We're partners, not subjects." The Tellurian made a gesture that his translator interpreted as understanding. "We wish we had known humans better before the walkout. We might have left the assembly earlier." Anne smiled. "You left when you were ready, that's what matters." Her communicator chimed. "Cargo unloading complete. Time to leave." "Safe travels, Captain," the Tellurian said. "You too, friend." Anne returned to the horizon. She filed her departure clearance and undocked from the station. As she maneuvered away from Tellurian 7, she opened a communication channel to her next destination. "Grexian Station 4. This is the merchant vessel Horizon requesting approach clearance and cargo inspection scheduling." The Grexian controller responded immediately. "Horizon, we have you on our board. Approach clearance granted. Inspection Bay 7 in 3 hours. And Captain Foster." "Yes. It's good to see you back in our space. We missed working with human traders." Anne felt warmth spread through her chest. "We missed you too, Station 4. See you in 3 hours." She closed the channel and set her course. Through the window, she could see coalition relay stations dotting the space lanes. Each one a bright point of light in the darkness. Each one a symbol of honest cooperation. The galaxy had changed. It was smaller now in some ways. The coalition covered less space than the old assembly, but it was stronger, built on truth instead of convenience, on partnership instead of power. Anne thought about Rachel Stone, who had started all of this by refusing to stay quiet. Rachel had told the truth even when it cost everything. She had walked away from the assembly even though everyone said it was impossible. Turned out it wasn't impossible, it was necessary. The horizon accelerated toward Grexian space. Anne watched the stars slide past her windows. She thought about all the other human captains flying similar routes, all of them carrying cargo honestly, all of them building trust one delivery at a time. This was how you changed the galaxy, not through grand gestures or political maneuvering, through small acts of integrity repeated every day until they became the foundation of something new. The assembly had been built on the idea that someone had to be in charge. The coalition was built on the idea that everyone could be trusted. It turned out trust was the better foundation. Anne smiled and turned her attention to her navigation displays. 3 hours to Grexian space, then another load of cargo, then another honest delivery. One flight at a time, humans were rebuilding the galaxy's faith in cooperation. And this time, they were doing it right.